Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Shovel Knight King of Cards. In the last part we finished up the first chunk of the game and now we're in our second House of Joustus. Hoo-wee, competition here is harder than the first House of Joustus. Are you ready to get sweaty? You probably should, because the Cave of Joustus here is definitely more dangerous. With that said, you can come up here right off the bat and find yourself a secret card in a chest. This is the other Truffle Alkalite card. There's notably two of them. Now, up to this point, we've been seeing mostly only the occasional slam card, the occasional grave card, but largely just 1 and 2 power arrow cards. The Cave of Joustus brings in a secondary focus that might upset how your deck's been building up to this point, but we'll talk more about that as we go here. With that said, my goal in every Hall of Joustus moving forward is the same thing I did back in the first one, where I'm gonna go around and grab all the optional items, hidden treasure chests, and money that I can in them, as well as do the puzzle Joustus rounds first, then leave and do a save, just so I don't have to worry about losing any cards in the case I actually lose a match while doing the main footage. That's just so I don't have to redo the collection of items and money over and over and over again. Just a little streamlining thing for me. Up here using this little gel orb from the Mole Knight stages in the earlier campaigns, we can get ourselves our next little secret card. This is Chester's card, which is another one I really like. Having a power of 2 that moves up, I think is really good. I'm not sure what the actual math is of how many cards point what directions, but in my experience, up feels like a pretty indispensable direction even compared to the other ones. But I might honestly just be imagining that, because there's a good chance of that. For right now, let's head down to our puzzle Joustus rounds for right now. We've already seen Croaker, it's time for Toter. Puzzles, bleh, they're just a waste of time. Apparently you can win this game in 1 turn, but I can't solve it. Take a look if you like. It's not like I'm making any progress. In these puzzle Joustus rounds, we're gonna run into one of the things I was talking about a moment ago. Cards that have bombs instead of arrows. Bombs have the equivalent of a single arrow, so they are only level 1 power. But anything a bomb is knocked into is destroyed and that card takes the place of entirely. So say moving that card over there completely destroys the one to the right instead of pushing it to the right. That'll also work on another mechanic you can find in these stages more often than not, rocks that just completely block up a tile. I tried for hours. Hours of my life wasted. I'm just not that smart. Well, thanks, I guess. Didn't mention this before, but there's actually 3 puzzles. Regrettably, the second one's even worse. There's certainly no solution, but you can try if you want. Now, the thing about rocks to note in Joustus, and we'll see these coming up in the main Joustus games, is that if a tile is taken up by a rock and every other tile is taken up by a card, that still counts as every tile being taken up, thus that can lead to a win, loss, or at least a game end state. There's times you can use that to your advantage if you, say, have 2 gems already taken up and they have 1 and there's just a tile where a rock is remaining. But there's times where you're gonna want to take care of the rock, otherwise you might find yourself facing an early loss. Here's the last puzzle. If you solve it, that's everything, which leaves me with absolutely nothing. Great. This final one, it's impossible. You'll see. Wanna try? Sometimes the puzzle Joustus rounds do come down to just kind of trial and erroring and seeing what both you have and what the opponent has and figuring out what you can do from there. I remember at least 1 or 2 of these on my first run I solved just trying to put whatever I can wherever I could. Which, hey, it worked, but not exactly the most smart solution. Well, that's all the puzzles solved. Take this card. I'm sure you use it more effectively than I. And here we get Toter's card, which is also a new type of card. Not only does it have bombs, it has that little arrow panel at the bottom left of it. That's what's known as a switch card, and they can be pretty indispensable even if I don't rely on them too much. I'll talk more about them when we get into the next game, though, coming up right here. Hey, we built the great gate. The hinges took ages to forge, but our client paid a kingly sum. Get this, mate. He claimed he was a forest god. Fish here in a room full of truffles, if you ask me. A whale of a tale. Fancy a round stranger. And mate, if you ever meet a bloke claiming to be an acolyte, do yourself a favor, take the job. So, switch cards. The way they work is that whenever they get pushed, their arrows completely change direction. So with that Toter card, for instance, if it got pushed to the left, Its 1 up and 1 left bomb arrow will become a 1 down and 1 right bomb arrow. You can use those pretty effectively in certain combos to really take some good advantage of the terrain in a game, but it's unpredictable enough given enemy decks that I don't like to rely on them too much. Also, there we saw the rocks I was talking about. Keep those in mind moving forward. So what's really fun is the next opponent here is this Blazorb. What? You think I'm too small to play? Think I need hands to hold a hand of cards? Think just because I'm a Blazorb I can't play Joustus? Well, you're wrong. I held my cards in my mouth. You really want to stand in my way? No. Now, if you think back to the Mole Knight levels in the earlier campaigns, you might remember if anything that's on fire gets touched by this green goop, it gets put out and becomes gelatin for a moment. That includes him. Oh wow, that felt okay, I guess. It didn't hurt, but I'm not sure if... I feel like I could battle, but I don't have to. Would you like to? Sure. If you defeat me, your quest advances. Good luck to you, friend, if I may call you that. May the best Blorb win. Putting out that Blazorb actually completely changes their deck to change any of the Blazorb cards they have into just Blorb cards. And that might seem a little rude because it means you might not miss out on that card for now, but you can just get it from mystery packs if memory serves, so it's not really that big of a loss. I really like that you could do that. I kind of wish you could do stuff like that more often, but we do get one of my favorite cards in the game, though, the Jumblorb, which is just a 3-arrow, 2-power card. I'm resting my toes after a long shift digging for Mole Knight. He's a strict taskmaster, but he gets results. Work hard, play hard, buddy. If you want to challenge me, I'm ready to go at any time. Have a seat and plant your feet, pal. Let's joust. This is a particularly dangerous game because I think this board is always this shape. He's got a lot of arrows with bombs that he tries to push to the right, but if you're quick about things, you can probably take up the panels before he even gets a chance to get all the way over to one side. The fact there's only the one gem to worry about really does help, though. Now, with that, we can now access the Joustus champion of this hall, and if you've been paying attention to the banners up there, you'll recognize its familiar face. We're going after good old Mona from Plague of Shadows. With that said, I really recommend you buy a gem steal from Chester coming up here, because Mona's power as a boss isn't as annoying as Black Knight's was, but it can still be a bit of a game changer, to put it lightly. Mind you, at the end of the day, any of the cheats will come in handy in basically any duel, but Gems Thief seems to be the most overall useful in my experience. It's torrid here. Luckily, they let me set up my Dynamo Decanter. It's the only place I can test the thermal flux. Well, did I know I'd study more Joustus formulae than alchemical ones? I'm seriously, like, hooked. I guess I'm the champion here. Not much competition, really. Come back when you beat the others, okay? Those are the rules. Is that it? You beat everyone? You must have had a lot of free time. I get you. I've had a lot of free time down here, too. Well, shall we? So, Mona's deck can be pretty tough to play against to begin with. Can't test rail bombs down here because lava. Ugh. So I guess I'll just have to blow you up in Joustus. So what makes Mona rough is her boss power. She will select 2 cards. One will glow with particles moving outwards, the other moving inward. The one that has particles moving inward will be changed into the type of the card that has particles moving outward. So she just completely can change what's on the field, technically. With that said, because you can work around what's going to be coming up and you'll see what's coming up, it's a lot easier than dealing with Black Knight's screen wipe effectively. I lost. Bummer. It's probably for the best to move on, though. My research is entering its next phase, and I need to ask a small favor of you. I'm not giving your card back, nerd. I want it fair and square. No, that's not what I was going to ask for. You have an airship, yeah? My next destination's really far. If you let me hitch a ride, I'll owe you one. Thanks in advance, sire. Yeah, okay. I mean, I like you a lot, so sure. I don't know why, Mona's just always been one of my favorite character designs across the campaigns. What's notable about Mona joining us, though, is that you actively can't duel her on the Glidewing. If you want to go play against her again to get a card you missed from her or whatever, you need to actually go all the way back into the Cave of Joustus and go play her there. She only shows up in the background here on the Glidewing. With that said, based on this dance, we've once again reached another 10 merit medals, so it's time for another limerick from the good old bard. Yeah, him. What of the bomb? It's a simple device, but if you're to build them, you're wise to think twice. A quick look at alchemy ought to lay bare that one small mistake lands you up in the air. Haha, that's even a mechanic. Oh, must have been lost in thought there. What's up? No idea how we first heard about the Joustus crown. It was like a deck of cards fell out of the sky one day. Air mobility gave us a mean edge. We just needed to go find a sharp enough Joustus jockey. But our champ was too dull to avoid a disaster. Dark day. Never saw him again. Morale was low in the sky. Anyway, that's enough for now. Look to the horizon ahead. Man, his ghost is on this airship and you're not even gonna address him properly? That's just rude. Sweetheart, I was just telling King Pridemore how you like to dress up as a king. Yes, your billowy mantle is very nice. Make a fine training cape before you acquire a real one. Would you please stop speaking to my mother? Sweetie, have you brought some coin? Some of my favorite character interactions in the game are the mom and King Pridemore, because King Knight's reaction as we get through just gets more and more driven up a wall as he's like, no, this isn't happening, nuh-uh. Yeah, like I said, Mona is here on the glide wing, but she's just here in the background near where Cardia is. She's mostly there for flavor than anything to show you've actually beaten that specific Hall of Joustus. Although they already have a trophy for that, as we saw next to Cardia. We have one for Black Knight and for Mona now. For right now, let's actively start our Lost City stages. And these ones can get a little rough, but it's one in specific that's arguably one of my least favorite levels in the game. Minimum bottom 3. If only because I really dislike dealing with mechanic, but I'll talk more about that, I think, later this part. It might be next time. Excavation Station's main mechanic actually takes a couple of screens to get introduced. But what it comes down to is dirt piles, like the ones we've got some gold in otherwise in the game up to this point. But these ones don't have gold in them. Instead, when you twirl into them, you fall through them to the next layer below you. And what makes that kind of dangerous in some cases is that they'll be placed right over lava, so your goal is to actually not shoulder charge and not twirl at all. If you're gonna fight enemies, use sub-weapons like the dueling glove and all that. Like so, you fall right through. I like this a lot because I think it's a nice way to flip the mechanics up to this point on their head, considering you'd be so used to it. Like with enemies like this, you actually want to fight them using the roll rather than just the shoulder charge, which you should be doing anyway once you get the blast roll, but it really makes it obvious how useful that can be compared to just shoulder dashing into everything. With that said, based on the world map, this level has an alternate exit, and honestly, if only because it requires a little more precision or setup than the others, this is arguably one of the hardest alternate routes to access in the game, even if the alternate route itself isn't too bad. Also, drill through this pile right here to come over here to get a merit medal. I missed that one more often than I'd like to admit. This specific mini-boss type we've seen since the start of the original campaign, but the turncoat here is actually very useful whenever they send their fire out, because you can just get 3 going really quickly, and as you can see, grossly effective against a relatively large health pool. The alternate exit is down there at that dirt pile at the left. You can even see the sign pointing it out directly above it. But to get there, we need to be able to twirl over there. But because the wall over there is the gray stone, it's not stuff we can actually go up against. What we need to do is bait this beetle over there by getting in front of it twice, all the while dodging the fire. Then you can dash into that and then drill into that. That's a little more setup than most exits actively take, and I find it funny they went with that. The alternate exit is largely focused on the blocks we've seen in Lost City since the Shovel Knight campaign, the ones that break in sequence from where you actively damage them. With that said, I think probably the most dangerous version of them was back in Spectre Knight's campaign, as because you can only destroy them with a shoulder charge or the twirling jump, you don't need to worry about them if you're standing directly on top of them, even if there is an enemy in your way, especially considering you have sub-weapons that can keep you on the ground pretty easily around now. What really makes this route dangerous is the final room coming up here on the right, because we're going to have a bunch of 2-tile wide platforms that we need to navigate, some of which have the dirt piles we can drill through on them. So if you're twirling at all from hitting an enemy or the side of another platform, you're careening to your death in the fiery pit below. The bubble can help a lot here, either as a last-second save or just as a way to traverse through it, assuming you have more vigor than me at this point. But honestly, 4 uses of it can still get you some pretty good distance here. Don't worry too much about the money in this route, I would say. Just worry about getting to the actual end. Now, I'm going to see if I can do some research about this later on, of course. But I want to say every single world in the game, so every chunk where we're going after one of the Joustus judges, so like King Pridemore or Travel King here, has at least one level that you can only access by accessing alternate exits. So you really should go after them when you see them. But frankly, like I mentioned, this is already kind of a hit or miss, lesser played campaign to begin with. If you're not really digging the mechanics, don't worry about it once again. Now, I should note, historically, when you reach the second chunk of the game in Shovel, Pulp, and Plague of Shadows, it represented a pretty decent difficulty spike compared to the first couple of night stages. Spectre Torment, that was kind of a thing, but not really, because you could access the stages in any order. It's closer to being what happened in the first 2 campaigns here, but because the stages are ultimately shorter, even if there is more of them, the difficulty curve in King Knight's campaign is ultimately more stable. It doesn't spike up nearly as harshly, though there are levels within any given world that are noticeably harder than the ones around them, be they the first or the final in a given aesthetic. Well, first or third more accurately, because you can access most of the levels in really any order, depending on how you go about exploring things. This mini-boss makes me uncomfortable. I don't like how well animated his feet are. Get them out of my face. I don't want to see your grippers. The way this mini-boss works is that when he's directly above you, he'll stab down his spear. You can then dash into the spear to get a twirl and jump off, and then twirl off the top to be at the right altitude to do some damage. Using sub-weapons on this fight has always felt iffy, because it moves at such a rate where the Rat Bombardier is likely to miss. The hammer is a little slow for that too. The bubble, I guess, could keep you at the right altitude, so you could just do another dash into them afterwards. But even then, that doesn't exactly feel great. The turncoat can't really hit it. I've always felt this fight's a little rough and it has a little too much fight. I think maybe the armor I'm wearing's upward dash might be able to hit it, but honestly, for some reason, I just have continuously forgotten to try. Future me, you know what to go test, because we'll still have the game installed by this point, I don't doubt. Although, admittedly, I've had the game installed on this PC. Well, the new PC since I got it, but even on the old PC, I've had it installed since I think I did the Shovel of Hope playthrough, I want to say. Maybe just after that, because I may have been on the old college laptop I did that LP. But I've never really uninstalled it because I knew I had to do more LPs down the line. Now that we're getting, well, we're not getting close to being done with the commentary, but now that the footage is done recording, I might actually be able to uninstall it, not that it takes up much space. Treasure Knight and his iron whale infest these waters. Makes it a decent catch in months. And this heirloom is the last trinket I've got to my name. Please, would you bail me out here? Here we got the Scepter of Swiftness. Slash over great distances and even run across water. I like the sub-weapon, but I don't use it as much as I probably could. Oh, thank you. Let's see on the other side of the shells. Oh, and shoulder bashes will roil the sea, so hold off. The way the scepter works is you use it, you pause for a second, then you move forward at extreme speed, slashing through anything along its distance. I think maybe even taking out an enemy with it extends the distance. You can also use it to run on top of water, but you can also just use it at the height of a platform you're on to move forward and not drop for several panels. This could be useful to ignore terrain in a lot of instances. I just completely forget to use it, if only because I'm more worried usually about looking for the money than I am trying to get to the platforming more quickly. But if you can use this to pretty good effect, you could probably do some pretty notable, I'm going to call them sequence breaks, but that's not quite what they would be in that case. It allows you to get through some rooms more quickly. There's one room I definitively use it in later on. In fact, there's even a place I believe it would be very useful in during the final boss. I just completely forget to use it for some reason. I like the concept of this one a lot, and it's pretty good at going quickly. With that said, in most instances, if I'm trying to go a distance, I'm going to use the Bubble Frog instead, but you can pair this with the Bubble Frog to probably get some even further distances out if you're smarter than I am. I don't know what it is about this campaign in specific, but I feel like I don't use sub-weapons as much as I could compared to some of the other ones. Like, I feel like the campaign I use the sub-weapons to best effect in is overall Shovel of Hope, but that might just be because I've also played that one the most over the years, because, you know, it's the oldest far and away. It's kind of iffy. Also worth noting, whenever you use the scepter and you run into a wall, you do automatically enter the twirling state. Not that that really comes in handy that much when you're using it in main levels, it mostly comes in handy in this exact level to get all the money, but hey, it's worth noting all the same. Well, you dredged the trench, but nothing's left for me. Need an able-bodied crewman? Sure. Thus, another sub-weapon down and another person on the glide wing, which also means another Joustus opponent for us to get some cards from. First off, though, I'm going to go get the last of the Engineer's upgrades, which is the one I use the least, if only because it's a little more specific with how it works. What this one does is that if you land from a twirling state while at full health, you'll send sparks out in either direction from your landing point, which can be really good to offset certain enemies and lead them into a state where you can easily shoulder charge them to take them out instantly. But I just am seldom at full health long enough for that to be super useful. That's probably why you actually get the crying upgrade first, now I think about it, so you can use that a little more effectively. It's finally complete. How my brushstrokes have captured your essence. Tell me, how does it make you feel? I feel like a monarch! For doing all that and spending that money at Gouache, we get the King's Chair. You took credit for creating art. Lounge like a real king by holding up at any time. And notably, the throne itself actually changes its color palette depending on which armor you're wearing at that point in time. I don't know why, I love that animation so much, it's so fun. Treasure Knight will be sunk someday. I'll love to see his vault picked clean like fish bones, mark my words. Like with Joustus Hall, before I duel him, I am going to go leave and grab a save, though, so I can lock in all the items I just got and don't have to worry about getting them again and again anytime I try to reset from dueling him. Oh, must have been lost in thought there. What's up? Where was I? Hey, sorry to bring this up again, but I can't stress enough how good my antlers feel at this moment. New pair grows every season, you know, and mine are huge this year. I always miss them when they're gone. But right now, wow, just wow, if I could battle this feeling. Anyway, that's enough for now. Let's look to the horizon ahead. On that note, I'm gonna say this, but don't do this if you're super squeamish. If you want to see some of the most intense, non-violent images of the animal kingdom, look up what a deer mid-antler shed looks like. It's bloody, but it's kind of badass for what is otherwise considered a relatively harmless, impure species. I think deer are really cool. Skip isn't that hard of a duelist, but he's got enough good cards in his deck that if you're not prepared, he might give you some trouble. The fact I get some really good double power cards from him, especially from the Treasure Knight lineup, is really useful in the long term. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 7, we're continuing on here in the middle chunk of the game before heading on to the Botto's Big Bounce. See you guys then.